Today's collection piece is not going to be about coins, but a somewhat different collector item, a very unusual one. This one pertains to a trial transcript. Now, imagine, for example, if there was a rare old film that unfortunately it's lost. But maybe not all of it is lost. Maybe some reels exist, some reels don't. And imagine being somebody who actually holds an additional lost reel, supposedly, of the film. We all know what that could mean. In a sense, that's kind of what I have. For as a point of history, we have here, and it's published in this volume, the complete transcript of the entire 1925 so-called Scopes monkey trial. Every word, every question, every cross-examination, it's all there. General Student, Your Honor, I accept to that part of the statement which has brought in Mr. Bryan's name. Of course, have you finished your statement, Mr. Malone? Mr. Malone, no, sir. I see all this stuff. Everything done and said, even the attachments that weren't in the verbal testimony are included. Everything's here for every day from the beginning to the end. And this is all from 1925. How well the records were preserved. But when the same issue got revisited in 1981, with a decision from the court coming in early 1982, you'd think that a more recent time should have better and more thorough records. This is not the case, however. In point of fact, there's an awful lot that's missing. But I like to show just as an example of how important it can be that something might be missing. So, for example, we have the judge's decision here. Now, this is published by one side of the debate, obviously the creation science side. And it gives the statement from the judge here with a rather curious exception. We're in paragraph 2, and then a curious thing happens. We're talking about here, it's aimed to reach the 63 million children of the United States with the scientific teaching of biblical creationism, IBID at 1969, page 69. And then there's an asterisk, and it continues. It is true, as defendants argue, that courts should look to legislative statements, blah, blah, blah. There's a footnote here, however. A section elaborating the judge's views of the religious motivations of those who in favor of creation science follows here. It and the footnotes of the ruling are omitted. Why? To align it in size with the other chapters. Oh, well, we want to make sure all our chapters are the same size now, don't we? It's very important, I guess. But what's actually behind that asterisk? Fortunately, of course, the judge's ruling exists in full. How fortunate that we can be so convenient. It picks up here, and it will just okay. Its aim has been to reach the 63 million children of the United States with the scientific teaching of biblical creationism at page 69. Among creationist writers who are recognized as authority in the field by other creationists are Henry M. Morris, Duane Gish, G.E. Parker, Harold Slusher, Richard B. Bliss. More is this whole name of all these characters. Creationists view evolution as a source of society's ills, and the writings of Morris and Clark are typical of expressions of that view. Evolution is thus not only anti-biblical and anti-Christian, but it is utterly unscientific and impossible as well. It continues on here. Creationists have adopted the view of fundamentalism generally Protestant fundamentalism to be precise, generally that there are only two positions with respect to the origins of the earth and life: belief in the inerrancy of the Genesis story, a particular interpretation thereof of creation and of a worldwide flood as a fact, or belief in what they call evolution. So it goes on. Citizens for Fairness in Education is an organization based in formed by Paul Elwinger, a respiratory therapist, who was trained in neither law nor science. Elwinger is of the opinion that evolution is the forerunner of many social ills, including Nazism, racism, and abortion. Elwinger collected several proposed legislative acts with the idea of preparing a model state act requiring the teaching of creationism as science in opposition to evolution. Let's see here. It goes on. It goes on actually for several pages. And Elwinger's correspondence on the subject shows an awareness that Act 590 is a religious crusade, coupled with a desire to conceal this fact. In a letter to State Senator Bill Keith of Louisiana, he says, "I view this whole battle as one between God and anti-God forces, though I know there are a large number of evolutionists who believe in God, and further, it behoves Satan to do all that he can to thwart our efforts and confuse the issue at every turn." So, it gets even stronger. The most interesting, however, let's see. Okay. You are trying to play on other people's religious motives. I'm trying to play on their emotions, love, hate, their likes, dislikes, because I don't know any other way to get humans to become involved in human endeavors. I see emotions as being a healthy and legitimate means of getting people's feelings into action, and I believe that the predominance of population in America that represents the greatest potential for taking some kind of action in this area is Christian community. So he goes on about all of this. And it continues, all of this here. It is out of this milieu that Act 590 emerged. The Reverend W.A. Blount, a biblical literalist who was pastor of a church in Little Rock area and was, in February 1981, chairman of the Greater Little Rock Evangelical Fellowship, was among those who received a copy of the Model Act by Elwinger. So, Holstead, a self-described born-again Christian fundamentalist, introduced the act into the Arkansas Senate. He did not consult the State Department of Education, scientists, science educators, or the Arkansas Attorney General. The act was not referred to any Senate committee for hearing and was passed after only a few minutes' discussion on the Senate floor. So, it's kind of interesting. So, the state of Arkansas, like a number of states, okay, we get all this material, interesting documentary, actually rather damning in a way, before we finally pick up with what comes after the answer. It is true, as defenders argue, that courts should look to legislative statements of a statute's purpose in Establishment Clause cases and accord such pronouncements great deference, and so on. So you can see omissions can sometimes be very important. But now let's look at what we have in the trial itself. Well, for that, we'll pursue that in part 2.